Welcome to the 120th Dev Update here for Ergo. With me today, we are joined by a very, very special guest, core dev of Ergo, Kushti. How you doing, Kushti? Good morning.
Hello everyone, my pleasure to be here again. So yeah, not just special and maybe not special at all as regular now, right? So
Oh
regular
no, you're
guest.
very special. You're very special. Even if you're regular, you're very special, Kushti. Don't worry.
I mean, how can a regular guest be special?
Oh boy. All right, let's dive right in, Kushti. It's Saturday morning. We're gonna get this video wrapped up so that we can have it out for Sunday morning. So let's dive right in. Something that people have been asking about in chats recently is this Bitcoin relay or Bitcoin ledger or something that you're making that you've made for ErgoHack that you're working on to do some sort of Bitcoin swaps or something like that. Can you dive into that for us? I've barely read up on it, so I'm glad I'm taking this with a fresh look. Let's hear about it. What is it?
All right. So the idea is following. So you can run Bitcoin full node, right, which is quite heavy. But then you can write an SPV client even on very limited devices. And SPV client is limited, so it is just checking proof of work. So then it is
What's SPV stand for?
simple payment verification. So the term is coming from Satoshi white paper even from 2009. Right. So in this mode, so the client is just checking proof of work for all the blocks while using the headers. And then, it is assuming that the longest chain is also a valid chain, right? And then, it can check, inclusion of a specific transaction by using, Merkle proof of inclusion, right? And then, it can work basically with those transactions, right? So getting incoming payments, right, in the form of such transactions got from full nodes with proofs, and make outgoing transactions, right? Built on top of transactions received. Trustless relay is even more exciting concept, right, in regards with technicalities. So trustless relay is basically an SPV client built as a smart contract, right? So there is a contract, you submit all the new Bitcoin block headers to the contract, and then it is building the longest chain. Well, actually, a chain with most proof of work done on it, a chain with most cumulative proof of work, it's called. And then, it's possible to do the same. So it's possible to, for example, do trustless transfers from Bitcoin to transactions inclusion proofs. And so what SPV client, so the relay contract, as well as another contract which is checking Merkle proofs.
Hang on a sec, Kushti, you're choking up here. Let's let your network settle. One sec.
Transaction inclusion.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, maybe I should try another device.
You choked up pretty bad. Let's see.
Or not.
You're doing a little better now. Okay.
Oh, do I need for another device maybe?
No, it's
Yeah,
better.
well, I can use another device.
Oh, okay. All right. You don't have a bunch of bots running, sir? You still there?
Yeah. So,
Okay,
yeah,
perfect.
no bots, but yeah, I mean, it's the place in mountains, so not so good
Oh, gotcha.
connection.
All right, let's start back. Start back right where you started talking about how you said that a bunch of the headers would be included in the blocks in Ergo so that it could verify the longest chain on Bitcoin, and that's where it started cutting out.
Yeah, so actually, a chain with most of proof of work, a chain with most of cumulative proof of work, it's called in the Bitcoin jargon. And then, yeah, I also made another contract which is checking inclusion of a Bitcoin transaction in a Bitcoin blockchain by using the relay contract. And surprisingly, it was not that hard. Actually, not so hard
That's
as
relative.
I
That's
thought it.
relative, Christy. That's all relative.
Yeah, and actually, it wasn't that hard, and well, the contract is actually quite feasible because, well, the first Bitcoin relay was launched on Ethereum back in 2015, 16 probably, and yeah, so the implementation was started in 15 probably, and yeah, so I've checked it's back in 2017, 18, and the usual problem was that the relay was behind the tip of the Bitcoin chain by like thousands of block because it was very expensive in terms of gas.
Wow.
And yeah, this relay contract on Ergo, so actually it's not that expensive even. So, well, proofs are very feasible. Like, I don't know. So in worst case, maybe like 10 kilobyte, few kilobyte, yeah. So and yeah, so proof of transaction inclusion is also, well, the transaction itself, so a few hundred bytes usually, plus proof of about a few kilobyte as well.
So how's the functionality of this work? You have an off-chain bot recording or transferring the shares, the headers to a transaction that is inclusive in a block in the smart contract in Ergo?
Yeah. So the bots can submit actually all the headers found from the best chain and not the best chain, and the contracts will record them and choose the best chain automatically. But what's missed is well, incentivization. So I don't know how that was done in Ethereum contract. But yeah, I mean, so for the real world usage, you need to have a sponsor for that, right? To find some economic model, obviously, right? Well, for these bots submitting headers. But yeah, so some of chain bot is submitting headers, so the contract is validating proof of work, then recording headers. And yeah, that's basically it. And then, well, another of a transaction into the Bitcoin blockchain, right? And on top of that, you can build more chain contracts, like a contract which is then parsing the included I don't know, addresses with amounts, right, or data written with operator on the Bitcoin blockchain. So, for example, data for the RGB protocol, Nervos, for example, is doing that. Nervos folks are doing RGB++ protocol using the similar technique, for example, runes, right? So they're using Coppertone. Actually, well, these days a lot of usage for data written on the Bitcoin blockchain, inscriptions and so on.
So how do we verify that um the smart contract is actually checking to make sure that somebody's actually providing, that the bot's providing actual real headers from the chain, Bitcoin chain, to the smart contract? What's the verification of proof there that we know that data is good that's coming into the smart contract?
No, so it's validating proof of work, right? So to submit improper header, you need first to mine it, right? To spend a lot of proof of work, right? And yeah, then when it is checked, well, proof of work is checked, then yeah, well, parent is extracted, right, and the header is connected to its parent, right, and then yeah, well, cumulative proof of work for the whole chain is verified, right, also.
So
So
you could essentially um spin up some sort of bridge where all the data for Bitcoin, you could also do this for Ethereum possibly. You just look on chain for these transactions for submission to a multi-sig on the other side, and you don't even need to look on Bitcoin at all for that kind of thing. Like the current watchers do in Rosen, they're actually viewing the node in Bitcoin. In your model here, they can actually just watch the ergo chain for the smart contract where the headers are being dumped in and see if that transaction has made it into a multi-sig and then release funds on ergo. Is that what your thought use case is?
yeah, so you can have Bitcoin data on the Ergo blockchain, right? So avoiding running client for the Bitcoin blockchain. Just using data from the Ergo blockchain and validating proofs against that. Well, that's possible for Bitcoin. Then, well, that's possible for other proof of work chains with simple algorithms like SHA-256. That's possible for blockchains with Autolycus 2 proof of work algorithms such as BlockX. Um, but for proof of work blockchains with some well exotic algorithms like Nervos with its Eagle Song and yeah, what else? So K heavy hash in Caspa. And well, for proof of stake blockchain, so well, the validation is not so trivial, right? So well, then I haven't checked how to do that. And for proof of stake, probably you need for some heavy machinery to validate block header. And well, in most cases, I believe there is not even a notion of block header there in proof of stake blockchains. Then yeah, you cannot do trustless bridging with Ethereum probably. But yeah, I need to check. But well, in proof of stake, you know, even if it's block header, so it's just a data with signatures. So how can you trust it if no work is done on it, right? So I mean, well, it's easy to well provide a signature on another message, right? Another block header, and feed the relay contract with it. So I need to check, and probably in this case there is need for some heavy machinery, such as zero knowledge proofs. And
So
that's actually the next challenging thing I'm thinking about. Well, especially now in regards with 6.0 implementation. So I'm thinking about doing at some point verification for bulletproofs, which are trustless zero knowledge proofs. Right, and if it's possible to do bulletproofs in Ergo scripts, that would be well another
so you wrote
quite
you wrote a
exciting
paper on
thing.
bulletproofs like back in 20 in mid teens 2000, right? Like 2017. You wrote a paper with
Uh,
somebody on bulletproofs.
no, not me. So that was Benedict Boons, uh, and yeah, the Dan Bonnier. Yeah, so but I've attended well, very early presentations, maybe before the paper was published even. And yeah, so
Oh, I'm
still
sorry. I was confusing that with hyperproofs. You wrote a paper on hyperproofs back in the
yeah,
day.
but hyperproofs, yeah, so it's well, relatively recent stuff, right, in comparison with bulletproofs, and yeah, it's a different topic completely. But yeah, bulletproofs are nice. So and yeah, if it's possible to verify bulletproofs in ErgoScript, then it's also possible to verify related proofs such as compact Sigma protocols, uh, growth proof for one out of many signatures, one out of many commitments, probably.
So
It's called.
what's the advantage of integrating bulletproofs into it?
But then you can so if it's doable in ErgoScript, right, then without any modification to the protocol, you can actually do a lot of things in contracts. So for example, if you have some exotic proof of work, right? So one option is to implement its validation in ErgoScript, but it actually could be more efficient to just prove well, validity of proof of work via zero knowledge maybe, and verify its in ErgoScripts using bulletproofs, right? Maybe some other well, specific zero knowledge technique even maybe more suitable for this particular use case. And yeah, so you can do more like well, range proofs, right? And but basically, well, there are a lot of circuits for bulletproofs already known. So you can, for example, proof well, pre-image of hash and so on, and build a lot of cryptographic protocols on top of it. So well, that's would be well, much more powerful in combination with Sigma protocols than just having Sigma protocols, let's say.
Gotcha. So wait, back to the Bitcoin relay thing. So in a general understanding, what the big benefit of that is that people can come over from Bitcoin developers and develop purely on Ergo without even having to touch Bitcoin anymore, essentially, because they can read information from the Ergo chain about the state of the Bitcoin node or the Bitcoin transaction history. No?
Yeah, it's possible. So someone needs to provide Bitcoin data still, right? So
Right.
someone
There needs to be some sort of
needs
incentive for
to.
that. Maybe we can use Gort for that, Kashti.
Yeah, but actually, yeah. So you can do some incentivization scheme, right? So to reward people for providing Bitcoin data on the Ergo blockchain, and then yeah, so use Ergo as a smart layer for Bitcoin. And not just Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, so all the
Right.
SHA-256 proof of work blockchains.
Dogecoin.
Dogecoin, yeah, Dogecoin is on script, I believe. So Dogecoin is a merged mine sidechain of Litecoin, right? And Litecoin is script probably still. So but yeah, I need to check well, feasibility of that.
All
But
right,
yeah,
let's
and yeah, so there is a problem with trustless relays, though, right? In comparison with Rosenbridge, for example. So well, you can trustlessly deliver value and data from Bitcoin blockchain to Ergo, right? But well, the other way is not that possible because of limitations of Bitcoin, right?
no, right. Yep.
So then, yeah, it's just one way, but trustless kind of bridge. I don't know, highway. But yeah, it works in one way only.
Yeah.
But yeah, without trust. And yeah, so then still there is need for Rosen Bridge and all that stuff. So two-way options.
Yep, yep. Let's jump on to your other topic here. Congratulations. I saw you had a paper accepted to a conference in Italy recently.
Yeah, so actually the biggest conference on things like community currencies, alternative monetary systems, monetary theories, and so on. So last time I have attended it in back in 2019, and it was in Japan. And actually, well, it was I don't know about very interesting audience, let's say, right? So from people like local mayor and yeah, well, people from European Central Bank willing to discuss some alternatives to existing policies, right? In relaxed atmosphere to some, I don't know, anarcho-communist from Mexico, well, experiencing with local currencies, right, in the anarchist circles, isolated to a certain degree.
So what was your paper?
So
What was your
somewhere in
paper
Maldives.
on? What was your paper on that got accepted?
So this time it's well basically on chain cash, right? So I'm not using this word to avoid I don't know kind of shilling, right? Brand shilling. But yeah, I mean it's let me read the title. Oh, I haven't it maybe, or maybe I have it. Oh yeah, I have it. Oh no. So basically it's something like well oh wait. Trustless issuance of money with elastic supply via combining trust and blockchain assets in peer-to-peer environments. So something like that. Yeah.
So you said earlier before we hit record that the last conference you went to in Japan, this town had two local currencies. One was like a general local currency, and the other was a currency for aging people, essentially, to pay them out. So do in these local currencies, did anything naturally develop with these that's somewhat relationable or looks like your idea of chain cash with IOUs and notes passing to each other of value kind of thing? Did that kind of develop naturally there yet at that point, or?
So actually, well, Chain Cash was inspired to some degree by some old experiments which was from Japan. Uh, yeah, and which was quite popular in Japan back in like 2003, 2005, so before the Bitcoin. And yeah, so that was the idea of spender signed currency, and that was mostly Japanese concept. I mean, I haven't seen papers about using spender signed currencies outside. But yeah, it was quite popular and it had instantiation. So originally it was a paper by some pretty known local guy in, well, alternative monetary system, but I've forgotten his name. Can find after. And then yeah, there was implementation in form of somewhat peer-to-peer system. And that implementation used electricity as unit of account. So it was called IWatt. like electronic currency pegged to electricity. But yeah, well,
Kenji Saito?
Kenji Shaito, yeah, but Kenji Shaito made the implementation, right? So
Okay.
and the original concept was proposed by some guy, and yeah, back in Japan, I realized that he was quite of icon, right, for people doing experiments with money in Japan. So kind of iconic person, but I forgotten his name. But yeah, well, also chain cache is actually heavily modified within few iterations from the original spender signed currency concept to made it global, right, and well, combining trust, right, with collateral.
So, what was I going to say? This is not a, foreign concept, right? This kind of thing has been around for a long time. We even discussed earlier that you you were familiar with a local currency that goes around my town since 1991. You had a professor there that showed you about that. It's called Ithaca Hours. Same kind of concept with other local currencies, or that kind of thing. So I thought that was pretty funny that you heard about where I was from before I was even there, actually.
Oh, but Ithaca Hours is well, very famous, I believe. Community currency. So it was the first, or maybe the first successful community currency using man hour as a unit of account.
So how do you see a question I have is how do you see so in history, right? In history, it's not uncommon for local communities, small local communities to come up with these kind of local currencies for that for trading value and retaining it within the community. How do you see something like Ergo with a version of this but on a global scale? So now Ergo allows for kind of a global scale of a local currency of people's money. How do you see that affecting or that's quite a bit different concept there, right? You have a local currency which stays in the community, and now you have a global local currency that's able to expand borders and trade evenly with people one for one, of course, because it's the same currency outside of that community. What's was that your overall vision with Ergo as far as that goes, to find some global replacement for this kind of local currency idea?
Oh, so maybe not replacement. So well, monetary systems are quite complex, right? Naturally complex,
Mhm.
right? So in a fiat system, so for example, you have a lot of things like different level money aggregates and well. A lot of actors, right? Well, actually, well, even in regards with money issuance, right? So most of money are issued by private banks, but well, there are complex rules which are also changing like daily and so on. And yeah, so then so if you are building I don't know, so some kind of alternative, right, alternative financial systems, then well, it's quite naive, I think, to think that well, solutions would be as simple as that here, right? They wouldn't be. So you can't just, I don't know, have Bitcoin, right, replacing like everything on all the levels. And yeah, that's well, quite unnatural. That's quite absurd, right? So I don't think even Bitcoin maximalists, which are
No. But you're,
statements,
but not,
yeah. So
but not only
uh,
that, but Ergo delivers a framework for this. So not just, I'm not talking about necessarily erg being replacing a local currency. I'm saying that Ergo, the chain itself and the public ledger and how it's made and how it's spans and is unstoppable as far as anybody can run it on anything. It delivers a framework where you can develop some sort of digital version of paper currency in this local kind of aspect. So it wouldn't surprise me, and I think it'd be easy to do, at least if something like Ithaca Hours were integrated into an on-chain ledger like Ergo, not necessarily Ithaca Hours to Ergo to Ergs, but Ithaca Hours to some sort of digital Ithaca Hours. I don't think that's a big step, a big leap in my head that something like that's possible.
yeah. But yeah, again, there are many levels here. So in the first place, yeah. So in many cases, these local currencies are failing because of ledger issues, right? So,
Right.
well, usually, well, if you run some paper local currencies, so you need for some enthusiasts, right? Well, supporting it for years, and that's not the case often. Yeah, it's quite surprising that Ithaca Hours is still alive.
Yeah, well, you have to have people willing to be paid in it, and you have to have people willing to pay in it. So you have to develop some sort of value or demand for it. That's okay. And unfortunately, now in Ithaca, with the rent is insane, and I don't think any landlords are going to be accepting Ithaca Hours for rent payments. So it's probably pretty hard to keep those kind of things going. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so then yeah, well, there is a problem with Ledger maintaining, right? Finding economic model for Ledger maintaining, and yeah, also with let's local exchange trading systems, for example, often there were problems with I don't know cheating. Ledger maintainers, right? Well, printing money to sell basically and so on.
Hmm.
So yeah, well, then some trustless ledger is already a big step forward, right? But so talking about Ergo and other assets like I don't know, Bitcoin on Ergo, Ethereum on Ergo, Cardano on Ergo, real world assets on Ergo. So, my idea is that, still there is need for more collateral, right? Well, globally to make money on top of, right? So, as especially in global environment. You cannot just do money based on trust like possible in small communities, right, with community currencies. And there also could be some hybrid solutions, right, when, for example, different communities are trading between each other and so on. So then there is always need for good quality collateral. And I'm thinking that proof of work cryptocurrencies, well, with certain properties, with stable protocols, avoiding breaking changes and so on. Well, about good collateral, right? Best quality collateral, maybe kind of digital gold. And then, yeah, well, it's quite natural as you have ledger there, right? Also to I mean, blockchain is a ledger also to have collateral from the same vault, right? And then to build systems to expand this collateral to build upper level money aggregates, basically, right? On top of good quality collateral. And then yeah, so you can have I don't know, local exchange trading systems collateralized or not. You can have chain cash and so on. So yeah, even I don't know, things like XLA, so like provision of loans to farmers in Kenya, right? So well, that's also well an interesting way to use blockchain tech, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we are not using anything complex here, right? So just using it as a transportation layer, basically.
Correct.
So
I would love it to be the fact that if somehow in the future the Good Things DAO could essentially go to these locations and find the general suppliers that are supplying these people with loans the money. So if we go to these suppliers and say, look, why don't we keep this on chain? So why aren't we able to lend these grocery store owners or this farmer a token or ERG or SIG USD or whatever, and then you accept that as a form of payment, kind of thing, and then you know some cycle it back. I'd love to see that stay on chain, Kushti, as opposed to just using it as a transport layer to get them money, which is good for now, I think. But in the future, it'd be really nice if that economy over there, or that small function, could circulate the digital value there. That'd be really neat.
all right. Yeah, so then there are many layers here, right? So well, you are using blockchain as a transportation layer for monetary value, right? Then yeah, well, you are using it for ledger, right? And here, well, if you are using it for local economy, you can actually do a lot of interesting things like credit clearing, right? Then, well, the system probably would just need for less money, right? Less loans from outside, basically,
Mhm.
to have the same economic efficiency inside. And then yeah, so you also have well, DeFi and all that stuff for custom tokens, right? All those things, token issuance, well, different experiments in tokenomics for well, monetary expansion, right? On top of well, the base layer, so the best kind of collateral, the proof of work cryptocurrency. So
We
ergo.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we're going to implement this semester, um, I finally was able to hire for this position that I was looking for. So that person starts at the end of June. It's not somebody in the ecosystem, but it's somebody that has some familiarity with cryptocurrencies and blockchain. And the idea is that the first thing we're going to start with is kind of our own currency and a DAO-based decision-making group. So essentially, we'll make a DAO for decisions being made by students. We want to try to get students more involved in like how a classroom is set up or how the lab is set up or what we spend money on here and there. So the DAO is going to suffice for that, but also we have a monetary system for printing, for plotting. You know, we're an architecture school, so people are plotting these 42-inch by 6-foot plots, and they spend a lot of money on these kind of things. So the idea was we'd create some sort of plot credit token and distribute that to students as reward based. You know, like you pick up extra hours at the shift, here's some plot tokens. You do this, here's some plot tokens. Or you need a refund, here's some plot tokens, kind of thing. So then these plot tokens can be passed around and traded among the students, as well as used to be paid in our plotting submission system, kind of thing. So we're going to be poking around with that, seeing how that works. It's going to be a fun experiment, I think.
Oh
Kind of
yeah, that's good.
a low key micro local economy.
Oh yeah, that's good actually. And yeah, I think so. Well, in future, there would be more and more such experiments, micro currencies. I don't know, local
It's
currencies.
it's going to be fun to see when these guys graduate. Like, are they going to sell their plot credit tokens to the lower class, or are they going to go with them and forget them? It'll be interesting to see how that happens. See what happens there.
Yeah, maybe some tokens will be held as, I don't know, kind of
A memento.
commemorative
Yeah.
things, right? Like collectibles, maybe
Yep.
kind of, maybe even sold to outsiders, right? As, I don't know, collectibles. We can imagine such thing, because yeah, there are coin collectors, right? So
Yeah,
why can't we have, I don't
that's
know,
true.
digital coin collectors? I don't know.
Yep. So that'll be fun. I'm interested to see, because students always have a lot of opinions, and it's not always facilitated on how to best take their opinions. Currently, they'll do surveys for the students and they'll have forms, but there's no real hard, concrete action after that necessarily, that all their voices are being heard. So the idea is that hopefully a DAO will at least kickstart that and get the people that are interested in interacting to interact on chain, in public. And then, you kind of, myself would be held accountable to follow those actions through, at least, for that. So it's going to be fun, going to be interesting. But those are the kind of things that I really love Ergo for. We have Jamai, I believe, is working on a Let's system. He was going to do it for the Ergo hack, but ran out of time. So, but it's something that he's still passionate about, that he's going to be working on. Those are the what's it, the cup of sugar coins tokens that you saw passed around in the wallets. That's him testing and stuff. So I love that stuff. I think that yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice.
The older I get, Kushti, the more I feel like I'm slipping towards some sort of libertarian aspect of, the community can take care of itself, and the community can set the rules, and the community as a society can push forward like that. So we'll see. I hate that term, but maybe there's another term. Is there a softer libertarian, Kushti? Is there another term for that?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, historically, there were periods when uh, there were like many currencies coexisting at the same time, like private notes, coins, right, and so on. And I don't know were they libertarian or not, but yeah, I mean, it's probably just a tool, right, for different people
Right.
and different. So well,
Yeah.
again, public attending Ramix, for example, right? So well, was totally different from I don't know, well, people working for European Central Bank to I don't know, some anarchists from Latin America and so on. So yeah, but well, about Let's. So well, actually, for Chaincash, there is a document how to implement a local exchange trading system on top of Let's. So well, then I'm thinking of Chaincash as of kind of assembler level for different monetary systems, right? So well, now it's Let's, but maybe well in future well, it would be possible to show well how other systems can be translated to Chaincash. Then yeah, well, then it's kind of assembler level, and well, I'm inviting Rust developers to jump on developing Chaincash server, so it would be good to get well, some transactions running well in observable future. Well, so for now it seems well we need to finish persistence layer a bit, and yeah, also to get well spending nodes transaction builder done, and then yeah, well, initial experiments can be started, And well, with experiments, it's would be more clear how actually it works, and then yeah, how to build UI for it and so on, how to build API for client applications, how to build UI for end users, and so on.
I got a question for you, Christy. So
All
most
right.
of most of your talks are very matter of fact. You know, here's what I've done, here's what I've worked on, here's what it is. You know, and that kind of thing. Have you ever considered at these conferences, like you're going to in November? Is your Italy conference, right? Your Rome conference? Is this conference you're going to in November?
Yep.
Yep.
Ramix. Yeah.
Ramix, have you ever considered baking in some sort of call to action in your talks? More of a subtle call to action, like this is what it is. This is a current state. This is a current state of things. This is what this kind of thing does for you. And then maybe here's where it could be, and here's where we should take it. You know, and let's do this kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's the plan. So last time back in 2019, it was quite hard to show well anything real to people. So Ergo blockchain was just launched, so I messed with well just fixing things around, I don't know, pretty trivial matters like providing API for miners and so, well, doing some wallet API methods for exchanges, right? And yeah, so this time, yeah, it's possible to show something more real, right, more substantial, and yeah, I can call to action in regards with chain cache, and maybe in regards with Kenyan experiment as well. So last time I met Will Radic, so a former American now living in Kenya, and he is doing local currency stuff there. So actually a few experiments in Kenya, but not in that place we are working with. So then it would be nice to well get in touch again and yeah, well consider maybe expansion.
All right, awesome. All right, what do you say we dig into the updates?
Yeah, let's go for that. So what's there?
All right, why don't you start out with Crystal Pool?
Oh, Crystal Pool. Crystal Pool is cool. So, yeah, there was a tweet recently, by the way. Have you seen it about 6 uh DEXs coming
Pretty damn cool.
on Ergo? 1 second.
I've got it on the shared screen if you want to see it there.
A lot of messages.
I bet.
There. Yeah, Crystal Pool. Right. So are you going to cover?
You take this one so that you can take your own into.
Oh, I'm
I'll
talking
take. Yeah, you will both talk, sir.
much.
Yeah, you can't get out of this.
Cleaned up the mess in the serial codes that was produced during the Ergo hack, successfully test integration to the, and yeah, so well, it seems that they do have well working prototype
So
of
this is
Crystal
kind of
Pool, right?
a trustless pool swap, essentially. Um, Similar
Uh,
to you. Do you have to find? Is it kind of like Atomic Swap, where you need a user on the other side to accept your swap, or is it more of a liquidity pool swap type of thing?
it's more like order book DEX, but with instant settlement.
Okay.
And yeah, this settlement is well based on a trusted party, but yeah, you don't risk with your funds, right? So well,
So
yeah,
the trusted party essentially activates the swap after two people agree to it, kind of thing, or
Yeah. But yeah, if trusted party is disappearing, for example, then yeah, after some time you can refund anyway, and
Oh,
the
very cool.
trusted party can't steal your funds.
So that was an
Yeah.
Ergo hack, right?
Oh yeah, that's Ergo Hack project by C8 and Savonarola. Yeah. So C8 I think is a backend developer there, and Savonarola is front end. And yeah, so C8 asked actually a lot of questions about multi-sig, and based on that, so probably there is need to do a tutorial on how to multi-sig transactions for developers. By the way, there were more multi-sig related projects.
Yeah, you got MG
How
Pies and
multi-sig.
LGDs. That's pretty sweet project. Did you see that?
Yeah, will we cover it later during the update?
I think they put it down there. We'll hit it in a sec, but that's I tested it
Right.
out with them. It's really damn cool. It's a lot like Roundtable for Cardano. Same kind of thing. Super cool. All right, we've got Satergo dev update. Good old Aberg. The transaction history now loads about 3 times faster. That's always great. Working on transaction history past 500. Exporting concise transaction history. However, not sure how to handle tokens with columnar data. Help would be appreciated. Any answer to that right there on the dev update, Kushti?
No, this columnar data. I don't know what
What
is
he
the
means by
question,
that? I gotcha.
but yeah.
All right, he's got hardening price checks. CoinGecko APIs become strict, and this can cause errors in the application when using CoinGecko. So he's fixing that up. Great. Oh, he's got a little cat there. All right, Kushti, you got a long update. Be my guest. Go for it. Did
All
we cover most
right.
of it or no? I don't think we covered a lot of it.
Yeah, so yeah, so 6.0 work not covered, and yeah, the Ergonaut update. So yeah, well, Ergo Hack submission covered, I believe.
Yep.
So yeah, well, the link is published where you can find contracts, tests, yeah, some description and slides, and yeah, I've made a video which will be published soon, so stay tuned. And yeah, all the code is in the public domain, so please feel free to use it for any purpose, including commercial purposes. All
Oh,
right.
you're a unicorn, Kushti. You're a unicorn.
Oh, but yeah, I don't have time to, I don't know, run on top of that. So then, yeah, finished assembling Ergo Protocol reference client 5022. So yeah, well, the new node release candidate done. So it's currently under testing and will be released in a few days.
When do
Then
you, where's 5.1 where people can download it and test out the Rocks database?
probably will be released along with this 5.0
Awesome.
one. So yeah, both
And
will be released.
you recommend 5.1 just because the database is better at kind of recovering from errors or that kind of thing and not corrupting?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, so it's more stable, yeah, from my personal tests, but yeah, it's not so good tested in the wild. So yeah, well, let's see. But yeah, well, for me personally, it seems to be more stable, much more stable, in the presence of, well, hardware outages, disk overfull, disk
Yeah,
overflows, and
I've
so
run
on.
into that twice in my life here with Ergo nodes. It's like such a damn it, I should have been watching kind of hit you in the head. Your freaking disk gets full. Sucks.
Yeah, then yeah, it's kind of lottery. So sometimes the database is surviving, sometimes
Yeah,
not. So yeah, and with 5.1, it's more stable, it seems.
awesome.
Then yeah, 6.0 implementation, Sigma 6.0. Yeah, so finished the serialization of new data types. Actually, well, all data types, but only from 6.0 serialization will be supported, namely option and header data types. Then yeah, finished well, check proof of work method for Sigma 6.0, which will provide possibility for Sigma chains to build trustless relays for Ergo very efficiently. Yeah, so then yeah, currently I'm working on well, unsigned big integer implementation for cryptographic purposes. And yeah, so well, thinking so currently I'm checking the implementation of the new data type, which is created specifically for cryptographic purposes with Schnorr signature validation in ErgoScript example. And then, yeah, I'm thinking about more complicated examples, maybe even bulletproofs validation. But yeah, let's see if it's not so hard to do. Then, yeah, started slides for adversary on Sigma is base layer for Ergo contracts, isomorphical tools. So yeah, I will explain how well the trees are done under the hood. Well, how they organized, and well, what are possibilities in regards with doing contracts on Ergo blockchain, on well, some imaginable side chains, and yeah, even for some off-chain environments, right? Because well, that was the original goal. Then Dexy. Yeah, actually, for Dexy, I finished update contracts for more actions after some verification done tests. So yeah, well, can
Two
proceed.
weeks. 2 weeks, Kishti.
I don't know. So can proceed with deployment of more contracts, but yeah, well, the problem is to find update key holders. So currently, well, only me and Code for USS, I guess, agreed. So we need for like 3 more. And
You don't want any of
also,
the Oracle runners to hold them?
and also diverse. So, well, we may consider like one more Oracle runner, but yeah, it also would be good to have
Somebody
more
outside of
diverse.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, maybe enough Oracle runners even. Well,
Maybe
for
give
now.
one to Sahar.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, but currently, well, no any interest expressed. So, well, what can I do? So I don't know about 2 weeks even.
Yeah, there's no those kind of token holders, right? They're more like board members. There's no pay, there's no reward. It's just the responsibility of having the token to enact change when needed, kind of thing. So it's an interesting feat to try to find people that are willing to stick around and hold those and take that responsibility. But yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, but what can we do then? So, and another option is well, to remove update functionality and just to run as is.
You could you build into the contract to deposit some like split off the reward gort a little bit and deposit some gorts into the token holders wallets, the key holders wallets that hold it. So the contract would look for people holding the key and then deposit some of the gort that's distributed to everybody normally. So then at least they're getting rewarded for holding the token and they don't have to really do anything. So it could be less, you know.
Oh, you mean to distribute something to update key holders?
No, to distribute a reward for holding the key holder. Then somebody would have some incentive to actively hold the key and be a participant. You know, like
Huh.
Gore Oracle people, you know, they have to run, we have to run actual hardware and stay up to date and make sure we're not killing our nodes. So we get Gort rewards, but there's no reward to hold the key that does the updates. So I'm saying you could program into the contract to just scan the blockchain for holders of the key, current holders of the key, and then just split off some Gort rewards for them, you know, once a month or something like that. You know, just so there's incentive, like, hey, will you hold this key? You know, you'll have to use devote sometimes. You'll also get a few Gort rewards for holding it.
Yeah, I don't know. So maybe it's simpler to just manually reward, because the plan is to bond the update keys after like in 6 months or like that. So well,
I'll burn them.
that's.
I got you. Well, that could be done too. You're right. You're right. We could get together as our
I'm
communist collective for the Gort channel and reward the key
y-
holders.
yeah, I mean, so the plan is to to run it and to see how it goes, but yeah, after some time
And
to
then burn
burn
it.
update keys, and so
Makes
to
sense.
make it
Awesome.
to make it.
All right, I'll try to bring that up in chat, Kushti, in the Gort
But
chat.
yeah,
See if we can offer
mm,
a bounty essentially to pay key holders to hold them for the next 6 months.
yeah, but yeah, well, then it's possible to pay money. Then yeah, so going back to updates from me, so move to Merkle 3 support for Sigma 6.0. Yeah, it's actually a Merkle proof check seems to be very feasible in ErgoScript, so that there is no need for well, a dedicated data type. And well, in coming days, I will review well, the proposed new methods for 6.0, and yeah, well, we'll remove ones which are not really needed, so which can be replaced with 1 or 2 lines of ErgoScript code. So well, then 6.0 still, I guess, will be finalized around beginning or mid-July.
Very cool. All right, we've got Morphic next.
PRs towards 6.0 ready for review. Actually, yeah, reviewed already. Added initial support of multi-sig transactions, probably caused by ErgoHack requests.
Yeah.
Next up, finish multi-sig signing support. Yeah, so well, with multi-sig signing support in AppKit and Sigma.js, yeah, it makes sense to make tutorial on how to do multi-sig for developer.
Thanks, Kushti. Appreciate it. All right, what do we have next? We have Nautilus team update. Manifest version 3 finally done. Rewrote the D app, wallet bridge layer, major refactoring. Fleet, they've merged proved D-log, signing PR after a long waiting for reviews. Ledger changes requested by Ledger team are finished and ready for review. Propose a solution to unstuck wallets with 20 plus tokens in a single UTXO. Oh, that's great. Let's hope they do it. Next up, Nautilus add multi-sig support at DApp connector level, and Nautilus added arbitrary data signing at DApp connector level, and also introducing Nautilus Abyss. So Nautilus Abyss is kind of their dev build when they had to rework it for a bunch of Chrome requirements, Google requirements for their code. This is the reworked version. So they are this will be kind of the thing that they're asking you to test. So if you guys have time, download this, make your main Nautilus, hook your wallet to it, restore your wallet to it, and test away. I'd suggest restore your spending wallet to it, not your bags wallet, because hopefully all of you have a spending wallet and not a wallet with just that you spend and keep all your value in. But this is the version that's going to get like new features before everything else. And if you guys have paid attention in the AMA this week, there was there's a GitHub YAML file that we're making as part of the SIGs. It's also being pulled from ACO's Explorer for not suitable for work and 18 plus and scam tokens. So essentially in this Nautilus Abyss, Captain Nemo has agreed to check that file that we're making, and you'll be able to check a box if you don't want to see not suitable for work tokens in your wallet, and it'll just filter them out so you'll never see them in your wallet. So super cool right there with Abyss. I urge you guys to help them out and test them out. All right, let's see. I'll take another one, give you a break, Kushti. We've got Blitz TCG, starting gain emanations, continued with activity, ability development, like 20 of them done. We'll test them during our next playtest. Yeah, we missed a playtest a couple weeks ago. I was bummed. Quokka is busy, so Sky Harbor integration isn't complete, but close. LGD is also busy, so busy. So burn contract is close, but not ready for prime time. More importantly, when BTC Rosen, when BTC Rosen, thanks. I'm the watchiest watcher. I just wanted QX to read this out loud. Great job, Blitz. I remember when this is an old joke. MHS Sam, when I had him on last year, one of his statements was like, everybody's bugging me for when Rosen Bridge, but nobody bugs Mick for when Blitz TCG. So this must be Mick getting MHS Sam back. All right, we got Ergo names for you, Kushti, with MG Pi.
Oh, Ergo names. Oh, good to see it
Good to see
again.
that again, right? I know.
Started reviewing updated contracts, started re-implementation for off-chain bots. And Moria, yeah, so Moria is a multi-sig server and Nautilus modification for multi-sig. New app coming on Ergo was an end-to-end success during hackathon. And I've actually had this on my machine for testing as well. Do you have it,
Yeah.
Moria?
Yep. I downloaded the
I'm
Nautilus plugin. Yep. Unpacked
I mean, yeah.
it and put it up. It's really cool. I did it with LGD and MG Pi when we were meeting about Sigma Lock. It's to explain it to people who don't have an idea about it. Essentially allows you to do a multi-sig. Well, multi-sigs what? Multi-sigs are you create a local key wallet, that's your signing wallet, and then everybody creates a public key from that wallet, and then the multi-sig is created from those public keys combined, and that's how it works. And then when you want to do a multi-sig transaction, you initiate it from the multi-sig contract, you sign it with your key, you pass it to somebody else who signs it with their key. So you have a layer of commitments first, and then it comes back around and you have the layer of signings. So it's a process and a half with Minotaur. I love Minotaur. It's beautiful. But even with Minotaur, you have to have a side like Google Sheet that you have to work with the team that you're signing with to go down the transactions, copy theirs and put it in and sign it and keep going. What they've done here is really neat. So you go to the site, you connect your their modified Nautilus wallet with your signing key, essentially. You tell how many others you want, you paste in their wallet addresses, and you create a multi-sig. So it creates a multi-sig right there for you. Everybody else goes, and when they connect, they'll see that multi-sig on the upper left of the website. So there's no question about that's what it's for. You can name it Kushti's DAO multi-sig or whatever. And then you hit next, and it has a little graphic that shows you, okay, it's at stage 2 of the commitment. It's at this person, next person, next person. You can track the progress of it. And then when it comes back around for signing after commit, same thing. And then the last person that does it can publish it. It's a really it's what's needed essentially. It's going to make it much easier for smaller groups to have these outside multi-sigs that aren't using Padilla perhaps for their multi-sig voting kind of thing. So really cool project.
Yeah.
Really excited about it. I hope they get third
Yeah,
place.
but by the way, Minotaur also had plans for multi-sig server,
Communication. I know. Yeah.
and maybe they can use Moria, actually,
Well,
Moria.
that's a good point.
So why not? And yeah, and well, I have to say, well, Minotaur is getting recently much better with multi-sig UX. Much better. And yeah, so multi-sig is low-hanging fruit, and well, it's good to see it's finally going to be picked. And yeah, so well, as a reminder, so multi-sig in Ergo is different from other blockchains. So, well, for example, if your DAO is having 3 out of 5 signature on chain, then yeah, for an external observer, it's not known who actually signed it, right? So, well, it's a
nice.
kind of yeah, it's a real cryptographic threshold signature. So it's not a multi-sig you can find in Bitcoin and other blockchains. So well, here so privacy is preserved, right? So only members of the ring know who signed.
So it
But
completely
outside,
obscures the address completely.
No, so from observing the blockchain, right? So you know the members of signing Creek, right? So, like 5 person for 5 address, you know. But you don't know who were those 3, right? Who actually signed out of 5. You see?
Gotcha. Yep. I gotcha.
So yeah, you know, so for example, if you know some union is having uh, I don't know, so some multi-sig transaction, right? Then yeah, it's known that it was made by union members, right?
Yep.
So the address are known. Um, that they're not hidden, but it's not known who actually did the transaction, sign it, right? So you have to persecute the whole union then.
So that was made intentionally when those that smart contract was made for multi-sigs.
Yeah, so well in the first place, so that's the property of Sigma protocols, right?
Okay.
Which are
Trustless proofs, essentially.
under the hood. So they are preserving zero knowledge here, right? So they are providing kind of real threshold signatures, right? So they're hiding. And yeah, in case of ring signature, so 1 out of n. So yeah, well, they also should work like normal cryptographic ring signatures, right? Not like done in Bitcoin, like in other blockchains. So that's why, yeah. So here you have kind of real threshold and ring signatures.
Very
So
cool.
a ring signature is a particular case of threshold signature where it's just one signer out of n, right? So when and yeah, I mean, I've seen that example actually in some papers on cryptographic ring signatures with the union, right? So when for example, it's you have a document signed by union member, so you can check that it's for example, so some leaking data, right? So you know that it was made by some union member, but you don't know who exactly did this.
Just
So
have to
yeah,
kill them all, I guess.
yeah, so that's yeah coming from Sigma protocols from underlying layer, and yeah, that's
Very cool.
here as well.
Is there a way, Kushti, in short, is there a way to do a multi-sig without committing first, doing the commit and the sign all at once? Or is there too much chance for malfeasance where something could be tweaked in between one person signing and another person signing?
Oh, but first you need to get commitments to build some joint
Yeah, so
commitment
there's no way
for
around
the
there's no way
transaction.
around that essentially.
Yeah, but so I guess with the signing servers overhead is minimal, right?
Like couldn't you well, I guess yeah, no. Okay, gotcha. All right, here we go. We've got Sigmanauts mining pool that entered the hackathon.
Also some forum posts on proof of presence. So yeah, I will actually check it tonight, hopefully. Yeah. So some NFTs
Where do you
on
see that?
proof. It's yeah, just below MGPy.
Oh, Captain Hook. Who's yeah. Grayman has a paper out. He's got a paper right here. You guys should click on it. Very interesting read for proof of presence. I'm sorry, I missed that. Damn it. Super
Yeah, I
super
need to
cool.
check. So yeah, please cover Sigma notes. I'm talking
Yep.
too much. Mainly. Oh,
uh,
one second.
yeah. All right, Sigmanauts mining pool. Hackathon project is in production with a few testers. The goal remained the same, but the method changed during the hackathon just because of my awful programming skill level. Mining core was left untouched intentionally to allow for updates to like with storage rent or updates to mining core if that's ever updated without hurting what's been developed essentially. So think of it as another layer on top of mining core. So essentially we took mining core databases and mirrored the important ones to a new server. Miners can append a special format of information in their miner config. This allows us to know which pool they'd like to mine to. So current mining pools, they'll ask you to log in and verify your IP address so that you can make changes to your threshold or your preferences online or payouts or that kind of thing. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to be more of a trustless kind of thing. So, without having to, I mean, we know your IP, mining core knows it, the server database knows it. So we'd like to start parsing those out, just dropping those so we don't track them. But the idea is that when you mine to a pool, you append some information to that pool. You tell them what address you want to be rewarded in. Then there's a period, and you tell them what your rig name is. Well, without modifying mining core, we can append a shitload of data to that last part, the rig name. And so what we're doing is we're appending the token Rosen. We're appending what's it called? The address you actually want to be paid to, and the rig name, and that's all we're appending so far, but we can append much more, and the threshold. So 4 things we're appending to this. So essentially it comes into mining core database and is recorded like this. So all these people mining to a Rosen token or Rosen BTC will all be grouped in the same wallet, which is we consider like a BTC pool wallet. Then what happens is with the databases mirrored, mining core will then pay out its normal payout schedule. So if I'm mining to a Rosen BTC wallet, my ERG payments go to this pooled Rosen BTC wallet. So I don't see them yet. Our second database then does all the calculations. Well, when the data comes in, it parses it out. So it puts your payment address back to where it should be. It parses out your rig name where it should be. And then it parses out what token you want to be paid in a new column in the database. So then when it's time for payment, after the confirmation gets above 0.3, 30%, it will then do a PPLNS calculation on everybody because it has to take in consideration everybody that mined to the pool. It will then take the rewards there, parse out just the Rosen people, and build a transaction, and then send out that transaction in Rosen. So the only thing not automated right now is that those pools, the Rosen, right now it's a Rosen pool. The Rosen pool is getting ERGs dumped into it and being paid out in Rosen. So the only non-automated thing right now is somebody needs to go and do that exchange on Spectrum. So I need to automate that as well to go from the ERGs that mining pool is dumping into there to the Rosen token of choice. But we can script that as well. So far it's been running it's been running for 5 days automatically and been doing its job. So we're just double checking the numbers, making sure the conversions are right. Right now I'm getting Rosen prices and ERG prices from CoinGecko, which I probably shouldn't be doing. I should probably just get them right from Spectrum so that the swap is actually more accurate from what we're swapping against. But that's it. It's kind of a cool thing. The end goal is that we can mine any token on Ergo. Technically we could mine to other chains as well. But the initial goal here is to keep value on Ergo by like having people who want Bitcoin but mine Ergo to take Rosen Bitcoin and keep it on chain and keep that store of value there, kind of thing. So it'd be neat. And in this future, Kushti, we'd like to be able to have the miner be able to mine right to a Duck Pool's pool and then just collect interest off the pool as they continue to mine to the pool. So the only thing they're getting in their wallet is the interest off of Duck Pool. They're never seeing any transactions until they harvest the interest. So we can do that with the current setup. It's not much of a stretch to add something like Duck Pool's submissions and keep track of that. In the very, very far future, Kushti, I want to put all that on chain. I don't want to really store that in a local centralized ledger. I want to put it at least in those kind of payouts somewhere public that's immutable. So that's a far future. Super, super, super neat though. It was a huge pain in the ass. It was kind of stretching the limits of my programming ability, even though it's not that difficult. It was still difficult.
Yeah, that's actually sounds cool. So you can mine gold even, right? Like
Yeah,
Dexia, Oglion,
you could mine Gort. We could add that in. Yep, yep.
or you can mine dollars, right? Directly.
Yeah, yep.
Well, on-chain dollars. Or you can, for example, mine them to duck pools, right? And well, just
Exactly.
get interest.
Yeah, so all the system does is it would you designate a duck pools thing. It would then probably most likely dump you in our SIG USD mineable pool. and then that SIG USD would then be purchased, dumped into duck pools, and we would record how much you were depositing into duck pools. And then every month we'd compare that against the ledger and compare who's all deposited into duck pools and pay you out your interest. And this is version 2 of duck pools, of course, with I think which are more frequent interest payouts. But yeah, so possibilities are really endless with this. And the bonus is we're not touching mining core. So mining core could update tomorrow and it doesn't matter, you know. Or Cheese could come along and implement storage rent. It doesn't matter, you know. It's all a layer on top of mining core.
All right, all right. Are you working with Cheese?
We paid Cheese, actually. We commissioned Cheese to do storage rent for us, so we're waiting for that
Right.
currently. Yep.
All right, all right. Okay, what's next?
Oh, HQER would be honored if you read his oh no, maybe he's nope, never mind. He doesn't have an update. Looks like Vorjak is next with Rosen Bridge.
Let me check. Yeah, seems so. Yeah. Yeah, Rosen. Maybe you can read it.
I'll read it. I'll read it. Give you a break, Kushti. So they added Assets API and Details API. They implemented a maximum value transfer logic within the network architecture. They deployed and configured the new XDefi wallet for operational use. Oh, great, great. Integrate the Eternal wallet logic into its respective package for seamless functionality. The Rosen service, they started working on adding Bitcoin observation and trigger extractors. The Guard app and Watcher app start testing the apps to make sure everything works as expected for Bitcoin launch. The Watcher, they added Bitcoin scanner health check parameter. Guard service, they added asset check health parameter for Bitcoin. They fixed an issue of not supporting Bitcoin native token and assets in general info APIs. Improved event history API to fetch payment and reward TXIDs from events table instead of transactions. For the launch of Bitcoin, the guards have successfully completed the keygen ceremony. Yay! We didn't even get a cake. There was no cake involved, Christy. And we're preparing other configurations for the guards operators for the BTC network. And that is it a single update? It's a single update. Great, awesome, exciting. I think Rosen reached an all-time high the other day. So lots of eyes on Rosen, Kushti. Lots of eyes on Rosen.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, and well, that's before the BTC bridge launch, and then Ethereum, right? So well,
Mm-hmm.
uh, a lot of potential. And after Ethereum, so well, as I heard, but probably it's not public. There will be more chains, right? Even well, even
Binance, BNB, I think eventually,
uh,
or no?
well, I know there are some talks in private with some chains which will pay some grants like Cardano did even. But yeah, I mean they're probably not finished, and
Gotcha, gotcha.
that's not for
Secret.
public
Yep,
anyway.
yep, yep.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
so uh and
Why don't
yeah, not finalized probably. So yeah, well,
why don't you take Death Gripsons? That's a very technical one, very tough one. Perfect for you.
all right. So, and he participated in the Ergo hack,
He did.
right?
Yep,
So, and he won the previous Ergo hack,
he
right?
did. Yeah. I really kickstarted him for the last
Yes.
couple months.
So, Atomic Swap software also. Well, I don't know. So Atomic Swap software is probably the name of the entity, right, which is behind Analog Ergo. And Analog Ergo is a tool for doing atomic swaps with Bitcoin. And originally there were talks about Ethereum, but yeah, it seems Bitcoin will be launched
No,
first,
I
right?
think he started with Ethereum. I think he's got that written, Kushti.
Yeah, but Ethereum is not launched, right?
No, it's not. Nope, nope, nope.
And probably yeah, it's complicated actually. So yeah, doing atomic swaps with Bitcoin is
Mm-hmm.
easier because of UTXO and all that stuff. So and yeah, so for people who don't know, so atomic swapping is a way to exchange assets on different blockchains without trust. The only thing you need is a counterparty on well a blockchain, another blockchain of interest. So on Bitcoin, for example. So Yeah, for Ergo Hack, we completed for this Ergo Hack, we completed a proof of concept swap between BTC testnet Lightning Network and Ergo testnet. Will be officially integrating Lightning features after public testnet release. So yeah, the for this Ergo Hack, it seems they did atomic swap with Bitcoin Lightning Network, which is quite big, right? Client swap state reloading is mostly finishing. Working on server swap state reloading now. Yeah, so it's some UI related stuff, I guess. And then once those tasks are done, public testnet should be available to be launched smoothly with minimal setup issues for testers. Well, that's nice. So that's another cross-chain option. So then, yeah, so for Bitcoin to Ergo, we will have like three options, right? One way, which is using trustless relays, but yeah, no any trust, no counterparties. Then, yeah, atomic swaps when
Peer to
you
peer.
need to have, yeah, it's peer-to-peer, well, but you need to have liquidity on the other side, right? You need to find counterparty. And then, yeah, also Frozen Bridge, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is, yeah, about double layered federation, but yeah, well, there is no need for liquidity or whatever on the other side, right?
Wrap tokens. Yep.
Yeah, then update from hackers, so you can read it. Actually,
Oh yeah, HQER. Crooksfi. I got a comment. HQ, you got to format your dev update a little neater, sir. You fixed some database bugs, not storing staking token ID. Worked on pre-sale Telegram bot utilizing custom Ergo Pay. 2 weeks pre-sale through Telegram, built and tested. Stake, unstake Crooksfi staking keys, built and tested. For Crooksfi DEX implemented as from amount parm and URL. Example. Oh, cool. You can swap so that you can go right to a swap pair. Simplified yield farming setup, create simple calculator to embeddable and ecosystem website. Needs some logic, but must be done. Most part is done. Very cool. And I think he was also working on a widget. Kind of like I think it was it Dex Hunter released a widget that anybody can put on any website and swap right from the website. So I think maybe he didn't announce it yet, but this is something that HQ is working on as well, where you can put a Crooks widget on your website and swap right from your website. I think that was something that some people were interested in. Then you don't have to go to Crooks; you can just interact with the liquidity pairs right there. PDP marketplace, sell individual token, batch sell Crooks, fire any stake keys, custom blitz cards, package sales. Beta version needs polishing, but it's up and functional. So this is kind of like a swap auction house.
yeah,
Stuff super,
Crook
super neat.
smart.
Crooks.
And yeah, and the Crooks widget sounds spicy, yeah. So
Yeah, right.
I guess a lot of people will install Crooks widget on their website.
Oh, we've got a big Sigmanauts update from Rustin. I can take this. We welcome a new SigCam Zuli Sig. Glasgow's created a more organized Sigmanauts Telegram chat with topics, bridge with Discord operational channels, and the current Telegrams. Any Sigs using Telegram, check that out. Discussions this week with about the possibility of Sigmanauts voting on winners for additional prizes for Ergo Hack, or possibly airdropping tokens at Ergo community to vote on Padilla. So we're trying to figure that out still. Liquidation of tokens in the SIG's treasury has started and ended. We're testing with SPF. We just liquidated a little bit of SPF over the last 4 days. And we're going to, the idea was to put that into SIG USD so we could support duck pools and earn yield on it. Sigmanauts DAO, QX made a proposal on Padilla that would have broken the SIG's DAO. Luckily, it was caught in time and we were able to change our votes. So Louis Vatra's logic. So currently in the SIGs, the way we voted Kushti was that it was an all or nothing. If one person voted no, then the vote was canceled and we had to discuss it and do another vote. So that was just a way that we had voted on before. So my thought was, hey, when we moved to Padilla, we just kind of adopted what Padilla's default voting threshold was like 60%. And I thought, shit, we really need to focus back onto what it was. And once we have that vote there, then we can vote to change parameters. I don't want to change parameters based on a new system that we didn't even agree to, kind of thing. So I made the vote to change the config to 100% needed to pass a vote. And Louis writes us 2 days later out of a 7-day vote, and he's like, guys, don't pass this vote. It's going to break Padilla. So it boils down to Louis Vatra. I love you, Louis Vatra. But Louis Vatra doesn't believe in greater than or equal signs. So,
All right.
so Padilla would have needed 101% vote to pass that vote in the config. So any votes after that vote passed would never have been able to be passed because they need 101% vote. But so he volunteered after a lot of chapping on his ass that he would implement a greater than or equals to for that, just in case that happened again, or else find a way to fix it. But we all voted no on that, and it failed. So we're going to work on changing the parameters. There's a new proposal in the DAO to fund all ErgoHack participants. That's already been voted on. So I think each ErgoHack group is going to get 100 tokens, 100 coins, regardless, just as a thank you for doing it. Proposals to reimburse Austin and SOT event stickers, those have passed. The proposal to reward Aiko has passed for his NSFW content filter. And I think I spoke about that earlier with Nautilus Abyss going to integrate a form of that from a GitHub repository that we've made. Discussions this week about governance and voting system, discussions about getting the multi-sig treasury signers organized to push out some time-sensitive transactions. We did it, yay. Discussions about Austin being kicked from Sigmanauts chat. Yes, we had some drama too, Christy. Some big drama. Read the meeting notes here, right here, if you want more specifics.
Mm-hmm.
Drama's
All right,
just
Cyberverse.
You can't own all the drama, Christy. We have some of the drama ourselves.
Oh, maybe hot season, Jess.
Yeah. All right, we got
All
a big one from
right.
Cyberverse, sir.
Cyberverse. Oh, it's big.
You want me to take it?
Uh,
Oh my
yeah,
gosh, that's huge.
yeah, but you can just, I don't know.
Yeah. We'll
Yeah,
work through it.
just read section titles.
Yeah. So we've got additional main access from Cardano. So they add access for Cardano wallets to play the game like the Ergo wallet, essentially. They did major changes in the back end. Multiple Cardano wallet support, added Eternal. The options to select either wallet will pop up then. They added more NFT skins. So change the skin of the default character if they own an NFT skin. Added the whole UI for that. Super cool. So I've got what's it called? I have the panda suit. It's really cute. I outfitted myself with a panda suit. So they've also added Omen and House of Titans skins as well with their partnerships, which is amazing that these guys are Cyberverse is out there partnering with people to get them in there. NFT skin shop they've made, items shop for buying skins, monthly leaderboard page. They replaced the search NFT feature with your monthly points and altcoin sections. Your monthly points equal your total point to the player made this month, and allocation equals your points divided by total points. Additional earning points in the leaderboard. So it looks like they've added some other kind of points for metrics in the leaderboard based on fishing, mining, gardening, exploring bins. You can explore trash bins and get stuff from there. I heard somebody like used all the stuff they found from the trash bins to build a mining rig, which was in game, which is cool. Search NFT feature. Moved it to marketplace, added a button for pop-up window. Item shop crate prices changes. Phantom resistance. They have a bunch of changes here that you can check out on item shop prices. It looks like they decreased them. Amazing. Oh my gosh, I spent so much on where is
Are you
it?
playing?
You know, I pop in maybe once every couple of weeks and play a little bit. I grow some vegetables, I'll fish, I'll walk around town, I'll check out my apartment, make sure it hasn't burnt down, and then I'll do something stupid like buy a bunch of albums, try to get new music. But
All right.
yeah.
Need to check.
Friend list and friend chat has been updated. That's really nice. The chat bubbles now, I don't know if he's speaking to this, but the chat bubbles pop up over the character when you're in close proximity. It's neat. Others added new pixel switch buttons, added new balance default small UI, added no trade feature for some items that they don't want you to play, including in-game jackhammers. Changed in the lobby and game top left UI. Gardening increased 2 times for all growing plants. Nice. decrease cost of renting a car, and change the login page design. Partnerships officially introduced first part of Omen and House of Titans partnership equals owning Omen or House of Titans NFT in your Cardano wallet will give you access to user exclusive skin when you log into the game. Super neat. And they have a YouTube video that you can watch about Omen and House of Titans. Look at all these emojis. Can I click all these? Will it let me? Perfect.
Nice, nice, nice. And yeah, and it's the last update actually.
No, I think Rust and Ninja did
Yeah,
this twice. He must have done this twice.
yeah. So yeah, the second update from Rustin is the same basically.
Yeah. And
So no
that's
need to read it
was-
again.
no need. I think that's it, Christy.
Yeah, yeah. So anything else to discuss?
I don't think so. I think we should remind everybody to help promote Ergoversary, get it out there
Yeah.
on the socials, talk about it, promote the videos when they come out. As you said, Kushti, there'll be 2 days of it, with half videos released on one day, half videos on the other. A lot of cool. You said there's several cool people outside of the ecosystem that are going to be giving talks on the Ergoversary. Are you allowed to say who?
Not yet, probably.
Okay. So that's really fun to see those. So yeah, guys, please retweet, repost, post on Reddit, comment, engage on those kind of things. Also, don't forget to keep talking about Ergo being, a smart layer for Bitcoin. It's a very important selling point for Ergo to capture that use case. And obviously our Ergo hack is centered around that. So
Yeah. Yeah, so as a reminder, so on July 1st, so it will be the 5th anniversary. So yeah, well, Sigmanauts and Ergo devs are preparing for it. And yeah, so we will have a couple of Twitter spaces with guests to be announced soon.
And apparently, and
And
Kushti just told me I had to host it, so I've been recruited, I guess. Thanks, Kushti.
yeah, so you will host the second of them. So one Twitter space event would be about future of POF, proof of work, and another would be about the next 5 years of the Ergo ecosystem. And yeah, also, well, there will be some presentations, including well, some novel and groundbreaking research in proof of work. And what else?
People are excited about what blows your mind. You had a comment on Twitter that, something blew your mind about what's coming up. So people are really excited to hear about that, Kushti.
Yeah, I can give a hint. So that's basically, I don't know, the same excitement I've got from this well, novel paper that I had when I discovered the original paper on Epopos. So it was before Nipopos, so they were interactive and yeah, proof of works. And well, the term Nipopos wasn't coined. Well, if my memory serves me well, so the term was coined by Professor Kias in some bar in Shanghai city. So yeah, but back in 2017.
The word Nipopals?
Nipopos, yeah. I mean,
So,
it
was
for
he
pronouns.
intoxicated and was trying to say something else and it just kind of stumbled out? It sounds like something that was
I don't know,
that way.
maybe just, Chinese environment. So
Okay.
it was pronounced like Nipopos or something like, I don't know, like something, yeah, sounding a little bit like, I don't know, been written in hieroglyphs. Nipopos, yeah. So it was, I don't know, so sounding quite, I don't know, quite common for the environment. Yeah. So yeah, and Yeah, well, and first paper wasn't NIPOPO, so it was interactive proof of work, but still it was
Mm.
groundbreaking. And so, yeah, the same excitement I've got now about, well, the novel result which will be presented. Then, yeah, what else? And also in ErgoDev's ErgoDev's DAO, so we are looking into creating a new guides tutorial. So if you are willing to join Ergo ecosystem development, which is fun and yeah, so sometimes also profitable. Then yeah,
Sometimes
well,
fun, sometimes profitable. Always
yeah,
ergo.
sometimes both even. So. Then, yeah, please let us know what's needed. So, if any concrete tutorials, guides are needed, then yeah, we would be happy to make them. All
All
right,
right.
anything else to discuss?
I think that's it. We've gone maybe an hour and 40. Kushti, I may have to cut some stuff, but
Oh, that's enough. Yeah, so then, yeah, have a good, yeah, time, everyone.
ciao, everybody.